The long weekend reprieve from load shedding didn't quite make it until today. Last night, Eskom implementing stage 3 load shedding. It's since updated its schedule for the upcoming week, and we're now looking at a stage 3 in the evening peak and stage 2 during the day that will continue until further notice. Well, with summer around the corner, which usually means less demand, can we look forward to possible lower stages of power cuts? We're joined by energy expert Mthunzi Luthuli, who is also an electrical engineer. Mr. Luthuli, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. I obviously struggle to say that with a straight face, right? Can we expect lower stages of load shedding? It just seems like something that is just not palpable, not a reality, not a sort of the current cycle and challenges that are facing Eskom, that are facing the energy grid. But maybe I'm just a pessimist.
Being pessimistic in this situation, Kathy, is not misplaced, okay? A few weeks ago, we had no load shedding, and then we went up to stage 6 in no time, and then we came down to stages 3 and 4, and then last week we had a bit of a reprieve, and now we're back to stage 3. This variability in supply is caused by a number of factors. Mainly, it's the maintenance of these units at Eskom. But it's not the only factor. You see, what we have done since 2012 was to introduce renewables, okay, to try and solve a problem, which makes absolutely no sense, because renewables are intermittent, they are unreliable themselves. So you take a power system that has high variability, and you want to solve that variability problem together with the actual power shortage, with a technology that is variable itself, intermittent and unreliable. You're not going to solve the problem. And that's the reason why we see the situation not improving. Since bid window 1 in 2012, okay, we have spent I think in excess of 400 billion rand, or at least we've commissioned projects in excess of 400 billion rands of renewable wind, mainly wind and solar. And the situation is not improving, it's getting worse. We have to ask ourselves the question, what is the problem? And what I'm saying is this is the problem.
Let's perhaps go back and take a look at the percentage that renewables actually contribute to the grid right now, before we can sort of take a deeper look at, then assess the impact of those renewables on the grid. Currently, as it stands, my understanding is that we rely on renewables just for a fraction of our power supply.
Yeah, that's true, okay? And the question is why, when we have commissioned so many billions of rands, okay, to build renewable power plants. And the reason really is again, I'll talk about this again, is the capacity factors of these plants, okay? So when you build a nuclear plant or a coal plant, and it's, let's say, 4,800 megawatts in capacity, what you know is that you can get 4,800 megawatts out of the plant at least 80% of the time, if not 24/7. In fact, nuclear plants have higher capacity factors in the ranges of 90. With renewables, it's far lower. Wind in South Africa has capacity factors of about 32%, okay? Which means that you are getting power from that plant 1/3 of the time. With solar, it's 25%. That means you're getting power from the plant 1/4 of the time. That is one of the problems that we're facing.
So my difficulty is that I'm trying to pull up the numbers, but I don't have them on hand currently. So perhaps you can assist, because you're pointing to the issue of renewables. As it stands, currently with the state of the grid, and when we look at that overall energy availability factor that the electricity minister is always talking about, what percentage of that is actually coming from renewables, realistically?
I think what we're getting from renewables right now is less than 20%.
So if it's less than 20%, can we actually say that it is as a result of the unreliability of renewables that we're seeing this variable in terms of the intermittent power supply? Because the reality is that this is not a problem that's new to the situation right now. In fact, I've been watching curiously just sort of, the commentary around the instability of the grid. This is part of what led to there being calls from business in the first place to say, if we're not going to avoid load shedding, can Eskom at least try and give business a more stable schedule in as far as electricity costs are concerned, so people can plan and know what to do? And Eskom has for a very long time been unable to do that. So we've been sitting with this problem for a while. I'm curious about your analogy around it. If in fact, when we go to the history of this problem, this has been Eskom's problem for the biggest time. They can't predict when their power stations are going to break down. They can't predict when a unit is going to go out, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah. Kathy, there was a time when we didn't have this problem, okay? And we didn't have renewables, we only had coal-fired power stations, okay? And one nuclear power station. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the problem is not with the coal-fired technology or nuclear technology, okay? It's the fact that the maintenance has not been done properly on the Eskom units that keep breaking down. That is the problem. Now, once you have that problem and you want to solve it, the thing to do is to, if you need new generation capacity, is to add reliable generation technologies, not intermittent, unreliable technologies to solve it.
But in all fairness,
yes,
if the likes of Kusile were functioning the way that they should have been by now, we would not have this problem.
Yeah.
So even the fact that you're focusing on the role of renewables, and South Africa has, of course, agreed to go for a mix of energy diversity when it comes to our integrated resource plan. The point is that even what you're pointing to in as far as sort of your traditional power supply entities, whether that's nuclear, you know what's been happening with Koeberg over the last couple of months. Just last month, where are we now? End of September. So just towards the end of October, beginning of September, we were talking about concerns about a grid collapse, precisely because of what's happening at Koeberg and the problems that that particular nuclear plant has been facing, again, as a result of the failures out of Eskom.
Okay. Kathy, nuclear power generation is one of the most reliable in the world. You just have to do your own studies, okay? Koeberg, there may have been certain problems that were caused really by people. It's management at Eskom. It's not the technology. And if you look at all the Eskom power plants, Koeberg is the most reliable since it started operating in 1980. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with nuclear. You can get power from that plant when it's run and maintained properly 24/7. It emits zero emissions. Zero. No carbon dioxide, no sulfur dioxide, nothing. So we just need to be clear about the technology, and you separate the technology from bad management at Eskom. We need to separate those two. So that's the first point. But the other point that I want to make, Kathy, is the following. I think that we have forgotten what the problem is. The problem really is greenhouse gases that cause global warming, okay, or climate change, right? Now, so the solution should be to reduce or eliminate carbon emissions, right? It's not about using renewables or any other technology for that matter. What should work is technology that removes carbon emissions from the environment. And here, as South Africa, there's something that we should have done which we didn't do, but it's never too late. This was to invest in carbon capture and storage technologies, what is normally called CCS. Okay, because what those technologies do is that they actually remove a lot of carbon from the emissions. In fact, there was a study done by Imperial College in London recently, and it says that if CCS technologies were adopted widely, we could remove up to 43% of carbon dioxide from the environment. Lastly,
Mr. Luthuli, we're completely out of time. Unfortunately,
okay.
I have to go to a break. I think, at the end of the day, you would still be sitting with just 20% of contribution from renewables. The rest of the 80% is supposed to be coming from a grid, by and large, that is still continuing to let South Africans down. Whichever way you look at it, we're still stuck in this situation. Energy expert Mthunzi Luthuli there. We'll be back after this.